Right, so if we look at the consideration when developing an HR strategy, obviously the first step is to have that voice and that seat at the table. So what does it take? Julia, if you want to start, that'd be great to hear.
Okay. Well, actually, I mean, obviously at the Brook, as head of HR, I'm reporting directly into the CEO. So I've got that kind of immediacy of access, and I think that that's probably one of the key benefits, not having many layers between some key decision makers and the HR function. So I think that structure, that access is the key, and I think then that relationship that you are building with your CEO is critical. And for me, that kind of advisor role, being a real kind of ear to the organisation, you're the temperature control, if you like, of the organisation, and giving that feedback, honest feedback to the CEO. So for me, it's and at times a difficult one where you might be giving feedback that is not comfortable for them to hear. But I think the success of it is that trust and honesty. Yeah.
Yeah, with you?
Right. I mean, for me, because of the nature of the organisation that I work is. It is really participatory. So one of the key success for us to have a good strategy, whatever strategy, is not only human resources strategy, when you really listen to the voice of your stakeholders, basically your employee and your peers. If you are the HR director, I mean, you really listen to each other director in this sectors. And also gaining the seat around the table is not something that you can claim, but something that you earn. Basically, really you saw that you know what you're talking about, and you know what they're talking about, and willing to contribute to the solution.
I echo what Julia was saying about relationship, although I would probably say yes, the key relationship is of course with your chief executive, but I also think that it's about other relationships too. So it is about building relationships and not just thinking about that one key one, but looking at others as well. The honesty bit I also very much agree with, and it's about being authentic. So staying quite close to who you are. And in terms of credibility, it's known in business, particularly in MSF, that you see it a lot. If you don't have MSF experience, they don't really trust you. But that should not rule out the other side, and that's professional knowledge. So you need to be known in business, but you also need to be very knowledgeable on your topic on HR. So it's marrying those two up.
So I guess that kind of cover what would make an HR strategy successful. Is there anything else you would have to add to that sort of recipe to get there?
I think the communication, because in many cases sometimes we have a nice design strategy and you just put it on the table, or some key people have it. You don't really communicate it to your audience, and the people that will make it happen also really break it down to really a clear work plan, like what you want to achieve in the first 6 months and 1 year and next, and evaluate the progress, because it's not written in the stone that we'll carry it forever until the 5-year finish. Keep review it and make the improvement.
I think it's very hard building a strategy when you're potentially in mid or coming to the end of an organisation strategy. I think what's been fortunate at the Brook is that we've just finished a 5-year, or we've developed a new 5-year global strategy, so I've been able to kind of dovetail in a new HR strategy. And I think that the challenge is how they speak to each other, because if you are fully aware of where you think the HR priorities should be, there is a danger that you might have your own agenda, in terms of identifying what you think needs to happen, but that the strategy might be pulling out something slightly different, and you've got to just kind of ensure, that you do put your own kind of functional expertise to one side sometimes, just to identify in more detail what the organisation might be saying. So I think that's been a challenge of developing a strategy that does bring in the organisation strategy story, and isn't therefore just a functional HR strategy.
Yeah, and following on from that, it's don't do it in isolation. Don't go off, sit in a little room and devise a brilliant strategy, because the strategy goes only so far. You need to get people involved and co-create that strategy with others.
Yeah.
It needs to be, I mean, I've seen strategies that are just so fluffy and all over the place, and they go on and on and on. And those are the ones that just end up in a drawer and not being used. So they need to be usable. So you need to have them concrete, you need to have them to the point, short, so that people actually do refer to them and start using them. And then I agree that it is all about monitoring progress. So it is also having them sort of built on some data and facts and analysis, rather than this sort of nice wishful thinking.
Mm.
So thinking about a message for a new HR director or somebody who for the first time will have to write that strategy and present that to their board or to their SMT, you know, from the lesson you've learned throughout the year, what would be the one thing you wish you had known and you want to pass over to your peers?
I think one of the challenges when you have strategy is really mobilizing the resources. So it is important when you develop the strategy, or you start with what available thing that you can use, and be realistic about it, and then really do quite a lot of stakeholder management and campaign to gain the resources. It's not only money, but also support and commitment from the people that are going to support your strategy.
I think for me there's the really hard sort of dichotomy about what is concrete in the strategy and what is dynamic and changing and shifting and having to be kind of reviewed. And I think that's the kind of impossible sort of stress of it, having to kind of have some of those priorities which you know are going to run the course of the strategy, but may well be shifting and bending and changing. So that strategy document has to be a very flexible one, I think. And I think so one of the things to learn is that you need to be careful about what you're promising to your organisation with your HR strategy, because you don't quite know how it's going to land and how it's going to develop. So I think you have to show the intentions, but it's then very much a kind of, you know, stakeholder management and working very closely with people to work out whether those priorities are still the same or need review.
Don't start with a blank sheet of paper. So use the organizational strategy, but also just look at other organizations' HR strategies, and there's nothing wrong with copy and pasting. I think the most brilliant artists of our time copy and paste from others. So use what's there, use existing documents in the organization, and build on that, and particularly the organizational strategy. So don't just think that you have to create something out of nothing with just a blank piece of paper.